In today's lesson, we're going to look at section 9.2, define general angles and use radian measures. We have 3 learning targets in this section. Learning target 9.2a is I can draw an angle in standard form and find coterminal angles. Learning target 9.2b is I can convert between radians and degrees. And learning target 9.2c is I can find an arc length and the area of a sector. The first thing we'll look at in this section is our angles. We're going to start with an angle that is in standard position. There are 3 parts to an angle. That is the initial side, the terminal side, and the vertex. When I talk about the initial side, I'm talking about the fixed ray that is located on the positive x-axis. So that's going to be our ray right here that runs along this positive part of this x-axis that I'm drawing in red. So that is the initial side of the angle. So the initial side of the angle is in red. So then the terminal side is the rotating ray. So that is where the angle is going to end. And now when we're in our center position, we're on this coordinate plane, it can end on any of the other axes. It can end in any of the other quadrants. Just for now, so you can see a picture, I'm going to go ahead and draw it over here in the second quadrant, but that's where the angle ends. That's the terminal side. So again, it could stop there in the second. It could have stopped in the first, made almost a full rotation, went down into the fourth quadrant. But the terminal side is the ending side of the angle, or that rotating ray. And then the last part of this graph is the vertex. And the vertex is where that initial side and the terminal side come together. So it's this point right here that is in this case, at the origin. And when it is in standard position, when angle is in standard position, that vertex will always be located at the origin. So again, the initial side is the starting point of the angle. It's always going to be located when it's in standard position on the positive part of the x-axis. The terminal side is where that angle ends, and then the vertex is where those 2 sides come together. So now when we have that angle drawn there, then the angle that I'm looking at is this angle right in here. That is my angle that we just drew. We have 2 types of angles. The first is a positive angle, and that is when that terminal side that we just talked about rotates around the origin counterclockwise. And then we have a negative angle, and that's when the terminal side rotates clockwise. So as an example, for positive, it's always still going to start on the positive part of the x-axis, and then it's going to rotate like that last one and say it ends here. So then the positive part, or this is, since it rotated counterclockwise, it's going to start at the positive part or at the x-axis and go to that terminal side. Whereas a negative angle is a little different because it's going to still start on that positive part of the x-axis because it is still in standard position, but this time it's going to, maybe come to here, but then it's coming down below it. So that is a negative angle. So the red one represents a positive because the terminal side is rotating counterclockwise. The blue is an example of a negative angle because it is rotating counterclockwise, or it is rotating clockwise. Now, pay attention. We could also have, if I draw another negative angle here, it's still going to start, like before, on that positive part of the x-axis, but maybe it ends up here. So it looks the same as a positive, but because it starts and it goes down and it rotates clockwise, that is still considered a negative angle. So even though it looks the same as that red one, because of where the terminal side is located, it's not actually positive because of the way that we rotated that terminal side. So now let's look at an example of how we use this. One of the things that you're asked to do, our first learning target, or part of the first learning target, is to draw our angles. So this example 1 is to draw an angle with the given measure in standard form. And this first angle that I'm giving you is 135 degrees. So when we draw it, I'll go ahead and draw my axes here. We know that we're going to start over here on the positive part of the x-axis. Now we have to determine where to end. So we need to look at our degrees. Well, I know if I'm starting there, that's my 0. If I go straight up, that is 90 degrees. If I go straight across, that's 180 degrees. And then if I come down from the 90, that's 270 degrees. And then if I make it all the way back up to the 0, that is 360. So a full rotation is 360 degrees. Well, now for this part A, they want us to draw an angle that is 135 degrees. So 135 is between 90 and 180. So I know that my terminal side is going to go in there. So now we're just kind of sketching this. So we're just going to estimate where it's at. So there's where I'm going to say it's at, and then there, draw my arc to show that it is positive. So that is then the 135 degree angle. So now part B wants us to draw an angle that's 640. Now 640 is more than 360, so I know that it makes at least one full rotation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to subtract off that 360 and see how much is left. So when I subtract that off, I get 280, so that I know that it is now one full rotation that takes up that first 360, but then 280 degrees more. So when I draw my axis, I'm going to make one full rotation, and that's represented by one full circle around, and then the 280. So now I've got to find where 280 is located. So if I think back to what I did on the first example, 90 was straight up, 180 is off to the left side, 270 is straight down, and then 360 is back up to the 0 line. So if I want to go another 280 degrees, that's going to be located in the 4th quadrant. So I'm just going to draw, and again, we're just kind of estimating where it ends. And then I pick up my rotation from where I stopped. And I'm going to finish it around to the end. And again, draw that arc on there so that you can see which way we're rotating, so that we can see that it is a positive angle. So there is how we represent 640 degrees. Let's now look at an angle that is a negative. So when we start our axes, we're still going to start in the same spot, but now it's negative, so which means we're going to have to rotate it clockwise. So we think of those numbers that I did on the first one, but now in the opposite direction. So negative 90 would be straight down, negative 180 is straight across, negative 270 is straight up, and then my 0 and my negative 360 is all the way back at the standard starting position. So if I'm going a negative 105 degrees, that's now going to be located in the 3rd quadrant. And again, I'm just going to kind of estimate where it's at, and then draw my arc to show that it is going clockwise, so that it is a negative angle. Let's now look at the second part of Learning Target 9.2a, and that is what we call coterminal angles. Now, coterminal angle is any two angles that have terminal sides that are the same. So they're stopping at the exact same spot. And then when they give us the angle, we find coterminal by adding or subtracting multiples of 360 degrees. So in terms of a picture, let's look at what it means to be coterminal. So if I have my axes drawn, say my initial angle, or my first angle, it's going to start there on the positive part, but then let's say it comes down here maybe in the 3rd quadrant. So my initial angle is a positive angle that ends there in the 3rd quadrant. Something that is coterminal to that, so meaning that it's going to have to end in the same spot that this first one, this red angle did, is still going to start here at the positive part of the x-axis, and then it's going to also end in the exact same spot, but this time it's going to have to go maybe negative. So those two, the red and the blue, are considered coterminal because they have the same ending. And also, they also started, because they're in standard position, So they started in this exact same spot. So they have the same starting and ending points. Now we could also put in, another one. There are multiple coterminal angles. Maybe it's another positive one that starts here, the exact same spot, and goes around one full rotation and then ends in the exact same spot as the other two angles. So there are multiple coterminal angles that you can find to one given angle. And remember, to find that, we're just going to either add or subtract 360, and we may have to do that multiple times. So we may have to subtract 360 twice in order to find the two that they want, because typically they'll ask for one positive and one negative. So you may have to subtract multiple times, or you may have to add multiple times in order to find those two, one positive and one negative. And like I said, there are multiple ones, so you may have one answer and the person next to you may have a different answer, and you may both still be right, just because there are multiple answers for these coterminal angles. So now let's look at looking at an example where we find the coterminal angles. So the directions read: find one positive angle and one negative angle that is coterminal with the given angle. And my given angle in this case is a negative 215 degrees. So I want one positive and one negative. Remember, to find coterminal, we're either adding or subtracting 360 degrees. So I know that if I add 360 degrees to this, that is going to be over the 215, so it will give me a positive answer. So I'm going to add 360 to this, and I get 145 degrees. That is a possible positive answer for this coterminal. I'm also going to then subtract 360 from this to find my negative, because I know if I take a negative minus a negative, or a negative minus something, I'm going to get a negative answer. In this case, a negative 575. And again, there's a possible negative answer. Now remember, there are multiple ones, so I could add maybe another 360 to the 145 and get another positive answer, or subtract another 360 and get another answer. Typically we go with the first ones just because it requires some more work if we go further out, but know that there is other possibilities. Let's try one more of these coterminal. If I start with 570, first thing I'm going to do, since I know that 570 is over one full rotation, I'm going to go ahead and subtract off 360, just because I know that it is a bigger number. So when I subtract off the 360, I'm going to get 210 degrees. There's a possible positive answer. And then I have a couple options. I need to get a negative. And I know if I add 360 to the 570, that's going to give me 930 degrees, which is also a possible positive answer, but I'm still looking for that negative. So what I need to do is go off of my first positive answer that I found, so the 210, and if I subtract another 360 off of that, that'll give me another negative, or another coterminal answer, which in this case does give us a negative answer, and it would be a negative 150. So there's my first negative answer that is coterminal. So this one kind of shows you that, one, there is multiple answers, so somebody could put either 210 or 930 degrees as your positive answers. And it also shows us that sometimes you're going to have to, in this case, we subtracted 360 twice from a number, or we could possibly have had to add 360 twice in order to find one of the two coterminals that the problem was asking for.